Hello everyone, Douglas Macbeth here for week 2 review of our MOOC. So thanks again to everyone who've made the contributions. It occurs to me that these demonstrate some things which are probably true of all learning processes and courses in particular, that often what we're doing is confirming things that you already know, those particularly for those of you who have been around for a while. But sometimes there are new things, and that's what we all hope for when we go to the effort of this kind of learning program. And I think the key is that in all of this we should be ready to challenge each other, but also ourselves, and see if we're really thinking through some of the things, because as we will see next week in particular, there's always a tendency to follow the same path through some decision processes, even although the circumstances might have been changed quite a lot. So if we're really serious about learning, then we have to be ready to challenge everything, look for the facts. This year in particular has been a challenge to fact-based decision making, but to the academic life and process is about challenging and looking for progress through often little steps of change. So well done for that. A number of the comments demonstrated that you enjoyed the peer review process and valued the insights from the people who took it seriously. We had one comment, there may have been others, about someone who was less than satisfied because their peer partner didn't do a really comprehensive job. But on the whole, I think everyone's stepped up to the challenge of that particular exercise. We've had 2 webinars so far. I missed reviewing the first one in last week's report, but have participated in the second one as an observer rather than a real participant, but both of them were very interesting. Week 1 we talked about questions about what the legal input to contracting should be. Historically, a lot of people opted out of the whole process and said, well, contracts are legal documents, therefore it's up to the lawyers. But week 1's discussion really challenged that assumption as well. So that was really interesting. Week 2 talked about offset. And if you haven't seen the video yet, I should explain what offset is. It occurs in big construction projects, usually where the main buyer is a government. It's very prevalent in aerospace and defence, but in other areas as well. And our speakers were from aerospace and defence in the main. Even Tim Cummins has a background in there as well. Mind you, he's got a background in very many places, and that's why he's such a valuable collaborator in this programme. Anyway, the point about offset is that when governments in particular are spending large amounts of their own people's taxpayers' money, then justifiably they want to get not just the benefit of what they're spending, an airliner or a defence programme of some kind, but they want to get some benefit to their local community. And so the offset is that we pay you $10 million, but we want some value to, let's say, $1 million, which is offset. So instead of flowing just out of the country, some of the money flows back in again, and that's the offset. It's a requirement in many parts of the world. They talked about 80 plus countries with all different policies about offset. But in particular, one point that strikes me was the comment that offset contracts are just contracts. They have other features in them, which I'll come back to. But they have to be treated as part of the business process. And again, I'll come back to that point. As a general thought, sometimes these webinars, particularly for the newer participants in our course, some of these webinars sound pretty detailed and might be a little bit challenging, but they're important. They give us a chance to bring some relevant, up-to-date, practice-based material into this course. So it's not just an academic exercise, this. We're getting discussions from people who are at the forefront of knowledge in these areas and long experience. So they can give us some examples of how the really big organizations often work, but also pointers to the future for the rest of us. Clearly the details of each of these things, each of these programs was really worth spending some time on. Across the two, there were some general points that I took out of it, which is, in both cases, there was an emphasis on the need to take a big picture view of the business. No longer can we think about these issues as departmental issues inside the legal department or the procurement department or the contract management function. We also need to think medium to long term, as well as managing the day-to-day transactional stuff. And crucially, one of the big messages, we need to cooperate internally to understand the other party and to support joint decision making. That really has to be the way forward. And we've certainly talked about it in terms of win-win relationships with customers or with suppliers. Essentially, we need to have the same kind of relationships internally as well. But the need to take a bigger view of the challenge facing us is core to something I've published fairly recently. So here's the marketing pitch. If you're interested in taking the subject further, here's a book from World Scientific, who's really saying, my view in the book was we're trying to cover everything except the marketing sales side and detailed finance. So the whole ecosystem on the supply side is part of the message that we're getting out of this course, that we need to connect between different relevant parties, play to each other's strengths and support them when there are weaknesses demonstrated. So I think these messages are coming across in a variety of different ways in the course, and I hope you're still enjoying it and can look forward to another week of really quite interesting and challenging material, which I think you'll enjoy. Just a reminder that the poll that I hope you've taken part on in week 2, we get the results of in week 3, so I'll comment on that as well as in general on the week's discussions. So thanks very much, and I'll see you again next week.